And you're live.
Regular business meeting of the Redmond City Council held on Tuesday, September 17th, 2024, commencing at 7 o'clock p.m. I will call roll, starting with Council President Kritzer.
Here.
Councilmember Fields?
Here.
Councilmember Forsyth?
Here.
Councilmember Salahuddin?
Here.
Councilmember Stewart?
Here.
Councilmember Nueva Camina?
Here.
And Councilmember Anderson?
Here.
The first item on the agenda is a proclamation for National Hispanic Heritage Month. Whereas National Hispanic Heritage Month from September 15th to October 15th celebrates the histories, cultures, traditions, values, and contributions of Americans whose ancestors came from 20 Latin American countries and territories, including Spain, Mexico, and Central and South America. And whereas this significant observation began as a weekly celebration in 1968, known as Hispanic Heritage Week, under President Lyndon B. Johnson, it was then enacted into federal law on August 17th, 1988, by President Ronald Reagan, calling upon all the people of the United States to observe this time with ceremonies and events conveying respect, awareness, and understanding of the lived experiences of Hispanics, Chicanos, and Latinos. And whereas reflected in the most recent U.S. Census in 2020, 62.6 million people claim these identities, making this collective the largest racial ethnic population in America at 18.9%. In the city of Redmond, the Hispanic, Chicano, and Latino American population represents a significant and fast-growing demographic. And whereas the 2024 National Hispanic Heritage Month theme is Pioneers of Change, Shaping the Future Together, which embodies the heart of Redmond, reflecting the city's beliefs, practices, and aspirations. Now, therefore, I, Angela Burney, Mayor of the City of Redmond, Washington, do hereby proclaim September 15th through October 15th, 2024, as National Hispanic Heritage Month. And this evening, I'm honored to present this proclamation to one of our council members, Councilmember Nueva Camina. Could you come up and receive the proclamation? And I'm going to invite Councilmember Nueva Camina to say a few words.
Thank you, Mayor Burney. Oftentimes, one of the first questions that I'm asked is, why is it the 15th to the 15th? And that's because there are 8 Hispanic countries that celebrate their independence from Spain during that time, starting on the 15th and running through. So that's why we don't celebrate it starting September 1st, going on through. I'm so proud not only to be our first Hispanic elected in the city of Redmond, and I'm grateful for the community for their support and to be able to have the privilege to be here representing my community. And I'm also grateful for the community leaders that have gone before me to even make this possible. So community leaders like the phenomenal founders and staff over at Centro Cultural Mexicano, the staff at For Tomorrow, the staff at Eastside for All, that's creating the space for conversations to be had. Because while our numbers may be lower in Redmond, they are definitely a very fast-growing demographic here in Redmond. And in the state of Washington, we are the fastest growing demographic within the state. Right now, we currently make up just shy of 15% of the population. With that, I am so honored to be receiving this proclamation and beyond privileged to be able to sit on this dais representing the community. Thank you.
Our next item on the agenda is an update from Puget Sound Energy. And we have Mr. Matt Larson, former mayor of Snoqualmie, but currently employee of Puget Sound Energy, who will be giving us this presentation this evening. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. My name is Matt Larson, Local Government Affairs and Public Policy Manager for Puget Sound Energy. Thank you for the opportunity to come and present to you tonight. Tonight I'll be joined by Colin O'Brien. Colin is the Supervisor of Engineering and Strategic Systems Planning for PSC. And he will be addressing, we had 2 sets of questions that we got from the council, and one was focused more on capacity and reliability issues on the local grid, and the other was about PSC and meeting our Clean Energy Transformation Act targets and goals. That's more regional and global. Given the time limitation tonight, we decided to focus on the reliability and capacity issues. We thought that would be more compelling for the council. And if I hope all of you received my email on Friday that responded to the CETA questions. If you did get that email, please let me know, and so I can get back to you right away. So with that, I'll turn it over to Colin.
Fantastic. Yeah, thanks, Matt, and thank you everyone for having us here tonight. Let me just share my screen. We'll get our presentation going. So yeah, like Matt mentioned, my name is Colin O'Brien. I'm the supervisor of our strategic system planning team at PSE. My team is responsible for evaluating the long-term needs of our electric system and identifying what sort of projects and improvements we will need to meet those long-term needs. We were hoping to have my colleague Yao Chim Chow here as well. He was unable to make it, unfortunately, but his team is called Regional System Planning, and they're responsible for the more near-term 1 to 5 year system improvements as a way to make sure that the system is safe, reliable, and effective, and meeting the needs of customers as customers continue to grow and connect to the system. Our presentation today has a few components. I'll start with the safety moment. That's an important part of the PSE culture, is safety. I'll talk about the modern electric delivery system, the electric grid, our system planning process. How do we make sure we're effectively and reliably planning improvements for the system? And then I will go into some specifics about the Redmond distribution system to make sure we understand where is Redmond today, where are our forecasts headed, and what do we foresee as potential improvements within the city of Redmond and the surrounding area. Like I mentioned, PSE has a culture of safety, so every meeting that we administer, we include a quick safety moment. With the cold weather coming, summer coming to a close, I thought it'd be good to discuss ladder safety briefly. If you have any of those lingering projects you're trying to finish up before fall hits, or you have any other projects that you're just planning on doing that require a ladder, this graphic from OSHA, I think, is very useful to make sure you're keeping in mind how to safely use that system. So you always follow manufacturer recommendations. Face the ladder while you're going up and down. Only use stable level surfaces. I know it can be tempting to just put it anywhere, but making sure you have that stable surface. We are the electric utility, so I'd be remiss if I did not mention, if you are outside, check and avoid for overhead power lines. Very important to avoid those, and then maintain 3 points of contact while we're using that ladder. Just very important to stay safe out there. Moving on, wanted to give some basics about the electric grid. So this is a bit of a linear depiction of the main components of our electric system, and I just wanted to go through and make sure that everyone is talking the same language and aware of where we all fit in within this picture. So from left to right is the typical flow of energy on the electric system, from a generation source all the way down to your individual home or business that receives electricity. Our generation sources are typically very far from our load centers. Those are things like hydroelectric dams or massive wind farms or solar generation sites that take up acres and acres of space, and like I mentioned, are far away from where individual homes or communities typically use that energy. So we have to have a way to move that electricity from that generation site all the way down to that end user in each individual's home or business. And we do that using what we call the electric grid. It can, it's very complicated, but a common analogy we use to describe the electric grid is similar to a city's roadways. So you can think of the transmission system here, and let me just get my my laser pointer so we can follow along. We have our transmission system here that can be thought of similar to our highway system. It's very large capacity, large infrastructure that carries a very, very large amount of energy from this generation source to somewhere close to our load center. So these transmission lines are those very large lattice structures. Typically, PSE operates them at either 115 kilovolts or 230 kilovolts. So it's very large capacity, very large energy that can efficiently, safely, and effectively transport that electricity tens, dozens, hundreds of miles from a generation source closer to where that load center exists. Next, we have our substation, which can be thought of within the roadway system as the off-ramp. So this is where we're going from that high capacity transmission highway voltage off-ramping down to our distribution voltage. So we do that using equipment called transformers, where we transform that voltage from that very, very high capacity down to a more reasonable voltage that we can use to distribute around a community. So from the substation, we utilize what we call the distribution system, which is made up of what we call feeders and laterals. The feeders can be thought of similar to your arterial roads, your kind of main thoroughfares through your city. That and often our feeders actually do physically travel along those arterial roads. So works out nicely in our analogy. But that distribution system is really meant to distribute that energy from that substation down to the neighborhoods or communities or business commercial centers that need that electricity. And then from that feeders, we have what we call laterals, which can be thought of as those side streets, neighborhood streets that then eventually feed directly to your home or business that utilize electricity as the end user. So this is how the electric system has operated for hundreds of years. Where the modern grid and where we're seeing a lot more advancements in technology is in what equipment and devices and data we have available to better analyze and plan that system. So within the transmission and distribution systems, we have what's called automation that allows us to reconfigure the grid automatically to account for outages, so to avoid individual customers from losing power due to a downed power line or a tree that falls into the line or something of that sort. So we call it a self-healing grid. We're able to use smart switches to reconfigure the system and keep electricity on for those customers. We use data to better utilize the efficiency of our substations. So that's to make sure that our voltage is not too low that it causes issues for the end user, but is not unnecessarily high in where we're inefficiently operating the system. So that's a system called conservation voltage reduction, and it's a very strong program that allows us to more efficiently operate our distribution system at a voltage that meets the needs of our customers, but still provides efficiency and savings for the overall system. And then, as many of you are likely aware, where we've seen massive changes in the way energy is used is actually at that end user, at an individual's home or their place of business. So we have new loads, things like electric vehicles, where if you're just at your residential home, maybe you have 1-2 electric vehicles, or your place of business, you have a whole lineup of electric vehicle chargers within your parking garage or your parking lot, or if certain commercial businesses may have a whole fleet of electric vehicles that they need to charge in order to utilize those vehicles effectively. Some other new devices we're seeing on the system are what we call distributed energy resources, or DERs, as we commonly refer to them. And those are actually generation sites down at the end user rather than upstream at the where we typically see them. So those are devices like solar panels, battery storage that an individual may use during a power outage, or any other sort of source that can actually generate electricity and even potentially backfeed the grid in some instances. So all of these changes are requiring PSE to be more flexible and adaptable as we understand how to use this data that's available to us, use these devices in a way that accommodates customer growth, but does it in a safe, reliable, and effective way to make sure no neighboring customers are negatively affected and the system itself is not at any risk due to these sort of cutting edge technologies. So now that we have kind of the basics of the electric grid, I'll go into how does PSE's process specifically take into account all of these different factors in how we plan projects. So PSE uses a planning process we've developed. We call it our delivery system planning operating model. And it looks fairly simple. It's just a few boxes, but there's a lot of work and a lot of analysis that has gone into creating this model. And it acts as a way that we can consistently and prudently look at the system and evaluate needs, determine solutions, and make sure we are being consistent and always looking at different types of problems in the same way. So it's a really strong, robust system that we use in planning to make sure we're analyzing the system appropriately and prudently planning solutions. So we start here with needs. That's box number 1. Before we ever think about what our solution is or what we're going to do on the system, we need to make sure we fully identified what that need is of the system. And that need can come from any number of what we call triggers. So oftentimes safety issues that have been identified in the field, customer capacity requests are something that we're seeing recently a big increase of. So these are large loads due to electric vehicle fleets or individual commercial, residential, or industrial customer wanting to expand their operation, put in a new building, something like that. Some of these other triggers that we were seeing a lot recently is fuel switching. So that is what we consider when a customer wants to move from a gas furnace, for example, to electric heating system. That would be considered fuel switching. Transportation electrification, of course, that is very front of mind with not only electric vehicles, but the light rail. So, we have to make sure that we can effectively serve the light rail and reliably meet the needs that it brings along with it. Additionally, asset health, reliability, integrity, that's kind of our bread and butter, that we analyze the system, the major assets within the system to make sure they're performing as they should, and we can proactively replace or address any concerns that we see due to any sort of identification from health or reliability due to the various tests that we put these assets through. So once we've taken a look at all of these triggers, done some very advanced analysis, and I'll talk a little bit more about the software we use later, but once we have a good understanding of what the needs are, we move on to solutions. And in the solutions phase, that's where we make sure we look at all potential alternatives. This top box here is our planned work. So that's our typical infrastructure increase. That may be a new substation or a new feeder out of an existing substation or any sort of infrastructure added to the system that can meet the needs identified. On top of that, we also consider alternatives for partnering with customers. So you may have seen in the previous slide, we have customer partnership solutions like demand response, where we actually ask customers to reduce their energy usage under certain system conditions. And we can actually utilize those types of programs as a way to reduce, defer, or eliminate the need for specific infrastructure improvements in some cases. So once we do our robust analysis of all the potential solutions that we're looking at that can meet the needs we've identified, we go on to our optimized process. So that's looking at cost-benefit ratio, making sure these different alternatives meet the needs of the community. There's not going to be any negative side effects from these different types of solutions. And from there, of course, we go operationalize. So that's construct, build, and energize these potentials, whatever solution we had identified as being the optimal way to solve the need we identified. From there, Of course, we always manage that project performance so that sometimes it's called backcasting, where we make sure that the solution or the alternative that we chose is still meeting the need we originally identified. This is where you kind of get that loop back into needs. Maybe things have changed and you need additional infrastructure to meet new needs. That's where you'd restart that, or you want to make sure that your project that you planned is optimized and operating in a way that meets that originally identified need. And then, of course, across every phase and every step of this process, we're considering equity. How are customers being impacted, and how are they benefiting from the various alternatives we're identifying from an equity standpoint, and then engaging in our public engagement to ensure that these alternatives are meeting the needs of the community. Next up, I'll talk a little bit more about these capacity-specific solutions, because that's where we're seeing a lot of the need, especially in places like Redmond that have a lot of commercial growth due to various factors. So the way we look at these load increases are twofold. So first, we look at load requests. So those are actual known applications from customers, whether that be residential, commercial, or industrial, that are asking for either an increased load amount or a completely new site where they want to build a new building or some sort of other electric need. We are seeing a significant increase in energy density, which means individual customers are using more electricity than they have before. So whereas before maybe a commercial building needed a peak demand of, let's say, 500 kilowatts, we're seeing that now the average building may need quadruple that to accommodate the electric vehicles and to accommodate the various load increases that we're seeing for each of these types of buildings. Once we have those known loads, we add on top our load forecasting numbers. So we have a few components of our load forecast. One of those we call our general load growth. That are economic factors that we have a team at PSE that all they do is load forecasting, and they consider economic factors and growth at the county level to identify how much growth we expect to see in different areas of the system that we can then use to plan accordingly. The other big ones that we specifically look at on top of that general load growth is transportation electrification, ideally in the form of EV forecasts. Where are electric vehicles specifically likely to materialize on the system? And then decarbonization, which is often at the customer level, that fuel switching conversation of how many customers do we expect to move from gas heating, gas cooking, gas systems over to the electric system. And once we get all of these different load forecast measures stacked on top of each other, we can then identify the appropriate solution or combination of solutions to bring that load back down to its baseline. So, this really is a conceptual diagram just to kind of show the different types of factors we consider when we're talking about load growth on the system. Now we'll go into our Redmond specifics. So I know this figure on the right here can be a lot to look at. These are all the distribution feeder and laterals. We talked about those arterials and those kind of neighborhood streets located within the Redmond area. These little icons that look like little green circles, those are all substations. So those are those off ramps where we go from the transmission voltage down to distribution. I will note that these colors don't mean anything in terms of capacity or reliability or any sort of other significance to the system. They're only there to show where one circuit ends and another circuit begins. But I do think it's beneficial to show this because it shows how interconnected our distribution system is. We have many different what we call feeder ties, or ways that we can shift load from one substation or one feeder over to another one to accommodate for outages or to accommodate for planned work or other sort of needs in that way. So, we like to have a robust distribution system to account for what we call that operational flexibility, our ability to shift load around to meet demands. And it's worth saying too that, the system does not end at the end of these feeders. I only loaded in these Redmond substations. So there are additional feeders that extend and connect to circuits that are fed out of Bellevue, fed out of Kirkland, or fed out of Sammamish over here on, the other side of the lake. So just wanted to know, here's kind of what the distribution system looks like. And this program that this come from is a load flow software called Synergy, and this is what we use to make sure we have a detailed understanding of what those needs are of the system. And we typically forecast up to 10 years to accurately accommodate what is those known needs and those future growth components that we need to accommodate for on the system. I'll go kind of, or before I go up to the substation level, I did just want to note, how detailed our Synergy model is. You can see here, we overlaid in this little gray box the distribution system for Redmond City Hall here, just to note that we do have a very, very detailed look at our system all the way from, that substation down to how these individual buildings are fed from our distribution system. So, our models, we can go in and very granularly understand how different load growth factors may impact the system. Next up, we'll talk about our substation level planning. So this is a similar map, a little more, shows a little bit more of a geographic background to give you an idea of where our substations located within the Redmond area. And again, these are all substations that feed different load pockets. They tie together in a way that we can ensure we have robust operational flexibility to meet needs. One thing that we're seeing a lot of recently is what we call large load applications. So these are these large energy dense users that I mentioned, things like electric vehicle fleets, commercial customers that have lab equipment, or these other abnormally large energy usages. So we're having to accommodate those into our models and understand how they affect the loading at these substations. We have a number of projects planned in the city of Redmond area in the short term. Those are primarily focused on building capacity along major areas of growth, or centered kind of here in the downtown Redmond area, and then up near Redmond Ridge, where we're seeing quite a bit of growth. And then we also have a number of projects that are addressing reliability needs in the region. So that's directly reducing outages or the impacts of outages to individual customers. My last slide here, I want to try to leave time for questions, so I'll try to get through it quick, but here's our loading forecast for the 5-year horizon for all of the substations within Redmond, both for summer and winter. You'll see here, so our dark green here is our existing load. That's our measured peak load on the system. And then this light green is our forecasted load within that 5-year period. And you kind of compare it against this dotted orange line to identify when we're going to need more substation capacity to meet the system needs. And as you can see here, we do have identified needs within the city of Redmond, specifically, up, like I mentioned, Union Hill serves kind of that Redmond Ridge area. Rose Hill, the Redmond substation, which actually has 2 transformer banks, and the Sammamish substation, which actually was within Redmond and feeds kind of that downtown Redmond area. These are all either at or close to this dotted orange line. So we have already started identifying potential projects that we can implement quickly in a way that will meet and alleviate those needs. And our identified solutions do provide more capacity before we hit that limit within that 5-year time frame. I believe our forecast currently for those projects are that they will hopefully be installed in late 2026 or early 2027. I did want to note here that the winter system does have a little more headroom of capacity, and that's due just to the nature of electric equipment. we can load it up a little higher in the winter because of the ambient temperature. The heating, the biggest problem with electrical equipment is you don't want it to overheat. So when it's cold outside, you can load it up a little bit higher in a way to meet some of those needs. So I think this is helpful to know, because if we see a large influx of that fuel switching, for example, so customers going from gas heating to electric, we likely will be able to accommodate that on the electric system fairly well. So that's a really high overview. I definitely wanted to leave time for questions, and thank you for having us. I really appreciate it. As you can see on our system, the more information we have, the more data have, the better we can plan. So we really, that's what we want to have this be, as a partnership, and understand where do we see these different load growth factors and how can we accommodate that into our model effectively. So if you have any questions, please, I'd be happy to answer them.
Great, thank you so much. Are there any questions from the council members this evening? I don't see any. Council President.
Thank you so much for that information. Appreciated hearing a little bit about some of the planned projects. We have received quite a few questions from residents in North Redmond, so I'd be remiss to not ask you, are there many planned projects in North Redmond coming up that you're looking at?
Sure. So North Redmond would be this region up here north of Education Hill. Is that?
Yes.
Generally the bounds. Okay. Yeah, we have a few different reliability based projects up there. I'm kind of looking at my side note here. Some of that automation that I mentioned that will allow the grid to be automatically reconfigured, and then some underground cable remediation, which is a way that we can strengthen that underground cable system. So it does look like a few projects that are focused more in that North Redmond area.
Great, and thanks so much. And I will also put a plug in for just some of the well, I just wanted to put in a plug because I recently was able to access, just in terms of the clean energy work that PSE helps to encourage, I recently was able to access a PSE appliance rebate that they have as a program, and just wanted to put it as a little PSA for folks that if you're getting a new washer, dryer, or other appliances, if you choose an energy efficient one, you can actually apply through PSE to get a rebate of up to hundreds of dollars off. So definitely look into that if you're looking to update anything within your home. And I think that's a cool program to be able to encourage more clean energy usage and energy efficiency in our community. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilmember Fields?
I don't think I can come up with a good pun like Council President did, but no, I appreciate the description of how this system works from a regional and local level. Would ask if there's anything that you're monitoring that might impact the people in our area from a geopolitical perspective. I know that when I look at your chart, I see the windmills and I see the solar, but I know that we get a lot of our electrical power from coal and from hydroelectric. Is there anything that is happening on a larger scale that you are monitoring or concerned about that might change the generation of electricity?
Yeah, great question. Absolutely. I'll just head back here to our graphics. We can all, just to reference it. And I will say that the PSE is committed to our clean energy future. So we are committed to by 2030 being 100% carbon neutral, and then completely off of greenhouse gases by 2045. So I will say that we are moving forward with building our own resources and acquiring resources that meet those clean energy requirements, primarily large battery storage, solar, and wind. So while I don't know how much we are monitoring the geopolitical landscape and potential change and how that may potentially change requirements, I will say we are fully committed to those targets by 2030 and 2045 for the supply of our electric grid, meaning, primarily that generation piece here.
Okay, thanks. Councilmember Stewart?
Thank you so much for being here tonight and providing this presentation, and for Director Helen for arranging it for us tonight. This conversation came about as part of our comprehensive planning process and some of the major plans we're making for our city for the future. And thank you, Matt, for the really detailed responses that we received via email last Friday directly to the questions that we sent along. I just want to make a comment kind of where Colin left off on these obligations, these commitments for carbon neutrality and then 100% clean by 2045. Here in the city of Redmond, our residents have a real passion for energy sustainability, climate resilience here in the city. We're making so many plans here in the city that rely upon PSC achieving these goals. And I think, the city, we have a really tangible example when we were able to transition to Clean Direct and get 100% clean energy through the PSC program. We saw a demonstrable reduction in our greenhouse gas emissions in just a short period of time. So all to say, I'm leading up here to my point, Matt, because I can see you sitting here, which is just to say we want to be in partnership with PSC. And when we're true partners, we tell each other when we're going to be off track. We have an honest and open dialogue about that. So thank you so much for the information that you provided about the status of the transition today, both in the presentation and in the email. And I would just invite everyone to keep the conversation open. Obviously, we're wishing you all the best of luck as you address some of these challenges that you've spoken of, again, in the email that you sent. And also, keeping communication open is really important because we're depending on you and you're depending on us, and it's a symbiotic relationship here. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions this evening? Seeing none, I want to thank you both for attending this meeting this evening and sharing your really great information about our power supply. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to say, Matt, to close it out?
No, just again, thank you very much to all of you for giving us this opportunity. And Councilmember Stewart, I think your words would be well received at PSC. We definitely see that, we're kind of in a different world at post-CETA, and unless we're really working as partners trying to solve this problem together, neither one of us will meet our goals. I did want to comment real quick on Councilmember Fields made the note about the coal, and I want to emphasize again that we're still committed to closing coal strip in Montana, or we're going to be out of all of coal by the end of 2025 or next year, and so that will be one more big step forward for us toward that clean future. So, thank you.
Thank you very much again.
Fantastic. Thank you all for having us. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. I have Council President Vanessa Kritzer would like to say a few words prior to opening items from the audience.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify before we go into items from the audience, since we got a lot of emails today about one of the items that are on our consent agenda, that item 13 did include a typographical error, basically included a dollar amount in one part and a different dollar amount in the other part. And I just wanted to note for those who were concerned from the public that when we get to that part of the agenda, I will plan to make a motion to amend that to make sure that we fix it. There wasn't any negative intention. It was simply an error on the city's part. So wanted to apologize to anyone who was alarmed earlier today, and just to let you know, if you came here to share about that we have looked into it and we will be addressing it later tonight. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much. The next item on the agenda is items from the audience. I have the sign-in sheet for members of the public to speak tonight. When I read your name, you'll come up to the podium and have 3 minutes to address the council. Council members generally will not respond to comments or questions directly at the meeting. Members of the public are welcome to email the council anytime at mayorcouncil@redmond.gov. The views stated by members of the public do not represent the opinion of the City of Redmond. And as a reminder, RCW 4217A555 prohibits any public comment during the council meeting in support or opposition of ballot propositions, measures, or candidates. All comments must pertain to City of Redmond business as indicated on the sign-in sheet. There are 4 people signed up to speak tonight, and no one has signed up to speak remotely. So I'll read your names in order, and please come up, and you will have 3 minutes to address the council. We have Radka Chapin Angela Shen, David Morton, and then Steve Yoon.
Good evening. A couple of weeks ago, I presented a comment in front of the City Council about the situation our quiet neighborhood is facing. After a corporation bought 2 houses on our street, the livability of our neighborhood is about to change drastically, as this corporation is in the business of tearing down perfectly livable houses and building mansions that are sold with huge profits to multimillionaires, with enormous climate, environmental, social, economic, and health impacts to the community and residents. We're facing the development of such mansions on our cul-de-sac. We have brought up the issue of residents being exposed to extreme noise these corporations generate, and have been told that there are no regulations in place to protect residents from the impacts of noise pollution, as these corporations are allowed to make any amount of noise, including noise that is deemed dangerous to our health, for 12 hours a day on weekdays and 9 hours on Saturdays. We have asked what steps the city will take to protect us from the impacts these corporations create, and the answer continues to be none. As I mentioned 2 weeks ago, I run a business from our home, working as a clinical social worker and a psychotherapist. The practice of psychotherapy is absolutely incompatible with extreme background noise for 12 hours a day. I have asked what steps the city will take to protect my small business that has provided mental health services to countless people, and their answer has been none. The issues we have raised are not just about us as individuals or our small neighborhood. They point to very large systemic problems in the city. There are questions about the viability of a city that is being sold to corporations, one residential house after another, and is turning into a place where only multimillionaires will live. There is no way that the city will meet any climate or sustainability goals set for itself with these practices of tearing down small, perfectly livable houses and building McMansions in their place. The answer that all that the corporations are planning to do is within code is not acceptable. Just because something is legal or within code doesn't make it moral, right, or healthy. If the code allows the destruction of our environment, unlimited gentrification, destruction of small businesses, and displacement of ordinary middle-class people, there's something wrong with the code. I would like to quote from an article titled, "Affordable Housing is Key to Thriving Community," published in a local newspaper in Island County that is also perfectly applicable to Redmond. Quote, "The very fabric of our community, our schools, local businesses, and even healthcare services depends on a stable and diverse workforce that can afford to live here." End of quote. The city should consider the following: make it illegal for corporations to buy residential property and fuel the existing housing crisis and gentrification.
And in conclusion?
I can end here.
All right, thank you. Next is Angela Shen, then David Morton, then Steve Yoon.
All right. Good evening, council members. My name is Angela Shen, and I'm the owner of Savor the Wild Tours, a small business based here in Redmond, offering educational classes focused on outdoor education and mushroom identification. As a Redmond resident, I'm excited to contribute to our community by teaching environmental stewardship, plant identification, especially to underserved groups, including many from our very own BIPOC community. Our participants leave both our classes with deeper knowledge and appreciation for Redmond's parks, as well as how to be safe and be great stewards of the outdoors. It was recently brought to my attention by Parks and Rec that they have serious concerns about the impact that our classes and the general public's impact on touching plants, berries, and mushrooms that we might find in our park system. I want to clarify that our activities have very minimal ecological impact. In fact, our groups are very, very small, intentionally so, and we stay on well-maintained paths, trails, limit hands-on touching and foraging, and focus on teaching sustainable practices. We even physically bring in specimens from other areas so that we can educate the general public about, gosh, what is a lobster mushroom? What's a chanterelle? What's a toxic mushroom actually look like? And that it's actually safe for you to touch. And we provide guests with cultivated mushrooms from local farms that we bring to the class so that guests can take them home to cook with. Our classes, as humble and small as they are, we've loved sharing them with the Redmond community. And I'm very proud that they've actually recently gotten much broader attention, including a feature that will be coming out in the Seattle Times this very week, furthering showcasing our city's commitment to sustainability and outdoor education. And given my very long-standing role on the Tourism Bureau Board of Seattle, we were actually selected to host several national and international writers next week that are covering a piece on Washington State about sustainability. And they selected our classes in Redmond to showcase that part of our unique ecosystem. We've hosted guests from all around the country and the world. And in turn, hopefully, you can see that that supports our local Redmond economy as well through hotel stays, restaurants, and small business stewardship. We are now, as a very small business, in our absolute busiest time of the year because we are extremely seasonal. Our classes are very a la minute. So I'm asking for the council's help in navigating the system so that we don't have to continue to cancel our classes. And I don't know how to navigate the system. So thank you.
Next is David Morton, then Steve Yoon.
Good evening, council members and mayor. I'm David Morton. Redmond has evolved from a small suburban town into a bustling hub of technology. While the city's growth brings economic prosperity, it also presents challenges which Redmond should prioritize to ensure sustainable development and to maintain a high quality of life for its residents. Some key priorities are, first, affordable housing. Redmond's rapid population growth and tech-driven economy has driven up housing costs, making affordable housing a pressing issue. The city should focus on policies that encourage the development of affordable housing units, that incentivize developers to build mixed-income housing, and that prevent displacement of lower-income residents. Expanding housing options to accommodate diverse income levels will ensure that Redmond remains inclusive. Second, transportation and traffic. As the population grows, so do traffic congestion and transportation challenges. The extension of the light rail system is a significant step forward, but the city should also focus on improving other public transportation, enhancing biking and walking infrastructure, and encouraging carpooling. Redmond should prioritize smart urban planning that reduces car dependency and promotes sustainable multimodal transportation options. Third, sustainability and environmental conservation. With an increasing focus on environment and climate change, Redmond should continue to prioritize sustainability initiatives. Key priorities should be expanding green spaces, protecting its drinking water aquifer, and reducing the city's carbon footprint through renewable energy projects and energy-efficient building codes. Redmond's commitment to green development ensures that economic growth aligns with environmental preservation. Fourth, economic diversification. While tech is the backbone of Redmond's economy, over-reliance on one sector makes the city vulnerable to market fluctuations. Redmond should actively promote economic diversification by supporting startups, fostering innovation in industries beyond technology, and promoting small businesses. And fifth, public services and infrastructure. Redmond's growing population puts pressure on public services like education, healthcare, and emergency services. Ensuring that infrastructure like schools, hospitals, and utilities expands together with growth is essential to maintaining residents' quality of life. Redmond can continue to be a vibrant, sustainable, and inclusive community while balancing economic growth with the well-being and long-term prosperity of its residents. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your 250th talk to us. That's a pretty significant record. And last, we have Steve Yoon.
Good evening. I'm here today to support Redmond staff with the recommendation to remove the design review process and to join what's happening at the state level. And I'm here to support it for some various reasons I'd like to articulate here tonight. The first and foremost is my understanding is the top priority of council is affordable housing. And in order to create affordable housing, we need a supply of housing. And so in the development community, we are building to the new state codes. And at the state level, we received zero, help. Then we have the new inclusionary that is coming up in the new code, and there'll be some additional requirements there. So, I want to articulate that it's going to be more expensive if we keep the review process in place. If it's more expensive, some of the supply may not get built. And if it does get built, it will make housing more expensive because it's, you can only support the cost with the rents that it's supports the project. So it is going to be very difficult. So I'm asking for a very thorough review of that in the context of affordability. Related to cost, just so I can articulate this, the design review process could take 3, 4, maybe 5 cycles with renderings, et cetera. A typical project, 350 units, that can cost $150,000. Also, the cost of time with loans and et cetera, that's another $150,000 a month. So, it could be $750,000, easy. So I just wanted to point that out. It's another cost that the developer has to bear, which means that the renter ultimately has to, bear that if it gets built. The other thing I wanted to point out is, I've been through the process several times. It's a tremendous staff load. It is a tremendous load, on us to be able to create something. And so the real question is does a design review that's staffed by volunteers, do they make better, recommendations than a professional architect or a developer who wants to be able to lease their buildings? I don't think so, but I think that's really the question, that should be asked is, does this create value with what you see out there? And, one thing I would encourage you to think about is if you are building a home, let's assume for your family, and this might not be the right example, but let's assume you have to build a home because you're moving, do you have to go, if you have to do the same process, is that fair and is it right, and will it create a better product when you build it? So thank you.
In conclusion, thank you. And that is items from the audience for this evening. Any items that were emailed to us has been distributed to the council. Our next item of business is the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any items to be polled? Councilmember Anderson?
Item number 3, please.
Yes, will be polled. And any other items, Council President?
13.
And item number 13, any other items to be pulled this evening? Seeing none, let me make sure what I need to read, 13. Item number 14, AM number 24137, is resolution number 1589, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Redmond, Washington, adopting a revised summary plan description for the City of Redmond's self-insured medical plan. And just making sure I don't need to read anything else. That is it. All those in favor of the consent agenda, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Let's do item number 13 first, and then we'll go back to you. So then you can recuse at the end, unless you want to do it in order. Are you ready to do it?
In order is fine. I'll just step out.
Okay, let's do it in order then. Is there someone who would like to move item number 3?
Moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Anderson?
I need to recuse from this item due to a financial conflict of interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Councilmember Anderson can return now. Just a little jaunt. Is there anyone who would like to move item number 13?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Council President.
I'd like to move to amend the resolution as follows. On the last whereas on page 2, replace $857,400 with $611,800. And in section 1, replace $857,400 with $611,800.
Point of order. The motion needs to be on the table before the amendment.
Oh, thank you. Would anyone? No, I think
I moved
we
and
did move and seconded it. Sorry.
Is that, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. We did do that. Sorry. Let's keep track. Okay. So, and now there is a motion to amend the resolution.
Second.
And there is a second. Council President, would you like to, I know you shared earlier why you're making this change.
Yes, I will just restate that the $857,400 was an error due to some documents that were sent and then some other documents. And then I think as the documents were prepared today, some numbers got into one of our documents, but not into the other. So our hope is to just be able to align. The amount was always intended to be the amount that previously had been allocated to Kenmore, and now to make sure that that gets allocated to the Redmond project, which is $611,800. That's what we committed to Kenmore, and now we can commit it to our own project through this vote. So that's why I'm proposing this amendment to make sure that we get the right number in there. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Anderson?
This is not a question on the amendment, but I do have a question on the motion.
Okay, let's work on the amendment first, and then we'll come back. Thank you. Any other questions on the amendment? Seeing none, this is a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next, if there are any questions or comments on the resolution as amended, and I will read the resolution into the record. Resolution number 1588, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Redmond, Washington, authorizing the duly appointed administering agency for a regional coalition for housing, or ARCH, to execute all documents necessary to enter into agreements for the reallocation of funding from Kenmore Supportive Housing Project to Redmond Supportive Housing Project as recommended by the ARCH Executive Board, utilizing funds from the city's Housing Trust Fund. Now, Councilmember Anderson, would you like to comment?
Yes, I have a question. Actually, I think this is probably for Director Helland. I don't mean to parade you up here, but
Director Helen, would you mind coming to the podium to answer any questions from the council?
we did receive 60 emails today about this item, so I wanted to respond to some of the items that had come up. Specifically, and I'll wait till she arrives here, we did see this item at committee, I think, last week. Can you clarify how the funding to ARCH for this biennium does not already include our agreed commitment to the Kenmore project?
Are you asking how the funding for this biennium under the $10 million is included to this project, or are you asking about the ARCH commitment?
It sounds like, I think I would like to understand if this is an additional fund. Like, why doesn't ARCH have our commitment already?
Oh, okay. So all of the commitments to projects that are proposed by the ARCH Executive Board after going through the Community Advisory Board process actually have to be approved by each council. The project was approved when it was in Kirkland, I believe that, or Kenmore. I believe that was last year or the year before. The council did approve that, so the funds were earmarked for that purpose and they were held for that purpose. The project didn't move forward, so when projects don't move forward, the money gets put back into the ARCH Housing Trust Fund pot. And Plymouth Housing requested that this money that was previously earmarked for Kenmore be reallocated to the city of Redmond. That went through the Community Advisory Board process at ARCH. The ARCH Executive Board approved it. Now each of the individual cities are required to reapprove the reallocation.
And this is an ordinance, is that correct? Because we had to change the funding allocation and approve what ARCH recommended.
No, it's a resolution because the money gets returned to the Housing Trust Fund pot. It went back through the Community Advisory Board process, and now you're being asked to reapprove it for the location in Redmond.
And it does not, there wasn't a transaction between Arch and the city. Just, that's the clarification I'm looking for. There was already a transfer of funds for our commitment to Arch within this budget cycle, and this is a reallocation and us agreeing to something that the board recommended.
Correct.
Great, thank you.
Are there questions on this item? Councilmember Fields?
Not a question, just a comment. So, thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions for Director Helland while she's up here? All right, thank you, Director.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Fields?
Yeah, I'll be voting no on this motion. And I don't want anyone to misunderstand that my no means I'm not in favor of our city government working to create affordable housing and create affordable lives. I don't want anyone to think that my no vote means that people with drug addiction or mental illness or other low barrier reasons for being in housing like this. I think that the city does in fact have an obligation to help. I also understand that this is primarily, for most council members here, a technical vote. And normally, something like this, where the council's already voted, I am very in much favor of supporting, even if I did not vote for it in the first place. I think that council members do have a responsibility to move forward. However, my overriding concern on this project will not just, I just can't get past, both in the process and is this the most effective and efficient use of meeting our affordability goals? I've never come to terms with that, so I will be voting no.
Are there any other comments or questions this evening? Councilmember Stewart?
Thank you. Affordable housing is a top priority of the city because it's a top priority of our residents. That's adopted in the Housing Action Plan that was unanimously adopted by this council and is the policy direction that staff act on under our direction when serving on regional boards and committees and really unique coalitions that bring affordable housing online. This is a project here with Plymouth that we are able to keep this vote tonight is one of those motions, one of those pieces of action that helps keep the funding stack all together, which has been the primary objective since conversations began in early 2024. And I'm very happy to continue to move forward and get this passed tonight. Thank you.
Council President.
I'm also very happy to vote for this and to be continued to invest in affordable housing and housing for people at all income levels in our community, and want to express my appreciation for the other Arch cities who hopefully will be taking similar votes to ensure that the funding can move from the Kenmore project to the Redmond project, and that this can continue to move forward. I also wanted to highlight, because we got a couple other questions, two things. One is on page 8 of the attached materials for this item. It references $8.9 million of a city investment that will complement the Arch investment, and just wanted to highlight that those numbers are the same ones that we have been seeing throughout the last 7 or so months, or at least since I think in many of our different touches on this throughout the last year. $3.2 million of funding commitment that we took from the $10 million that we allocated for affordable housing, and then $5.7 million for the estimated land value. So that's where those numbers come from, and they're really the same ones that we've been talking about for quite a while, and the previous numbers were the ones that Kenmore had, the difference being really the difference in estimated land value of our site versus Kenmore's site. The other thing that I'd like to just state for the record is that I'm really glad to have Mayor Burney as well as Director Carol Helland serving as our representative and alternate on the Arch Board. And they do that on behalf of the city of Redmond. So the decisions and recommendations that they make via Arch are on behalf of the city of Redmond's interests. And so there's no conflict of interest. I know we've gotten a lot of questions about that, but I do not see any conflict of interest of them serving there, them and us getting recommendations from Arch as well, and just want to appreciate both of their service on that. Thank you.
Councilmember Anderson?
Just another quick question. Will Redmond be the first to execute this resolution, or are other cities already approved the funding stack change?
Arch is a coalition that represents 15 cities. All but 3 at this point, after your council action, will have adopted the resolution, and the other 3 are scheduled to do so in the next month.
Okay, that's a great timeline. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Any other questions this evening?
I have a comment.
Comment.
So
Thank
I will also be voting no on this item, and the primary reason would be because I think that we've missed the opportunity for a public process on the proposal to build, and that is very having the opportunity to hear what our community would like to see in this project is an important part of the story that I would like to be able to tell with our commitment to affordable housing. And it seems like this is another opportunity for us to do so with this shift of our purpose to accept these funds with our partner at Arch. So that's my primary reason. The other is a pretty simple one. I'd love to see the building that we are proposing to build. I'm not sure exactly what will be going on that site, and sort of the timeline seems to be very unclear to me. So those are why I will be voting this against this item tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? Councilmember Stewart, then Council President Kritzer.
Thank you. I'll just state 3 things to make sure that we don't have confusion in the public. First, there was a great deal of public engagement in the process to develop regulations for permanent supportive housing in our city, and the feedback that went into developing regulations for what felt like at the time another property in another part of Redmond were always intended to be for permanent supportive housing all across our city. So we've had years, quite frankly, of public engagement on what permanent supportive housing needs to look like here in the city of Redmond. Additionally, council has received multiple updates on the timeline of this project, including our most recent quarterly briefing, where we actually had Plymouth here in the room with us. That was, I believe, July 16th. There was also some written documentation in the council packet if anyone would like to take a look. And my third... in terms of what's being built, the design review materials from the design review board are public, just like any other design review process. And the link to some of those materials is actually on the Redmond webpage, where you can come and learn all of the details about this project. That's at redmond.gov/ph. Thank you.
Council President?
I'll just add one more note on that, those good notes there, which is that right now, as part of our requirements for any permanent supportive housing that happens, Plymouth Housing is working on developing a community advisory group that will help to guide the development, design, and implementation of this project, especially the pieces that will go into this project, such as the code of conduct, the operational agreement, the safety and security plan, and the community relations plan. And application, I believe, is still open for that, as well as they're looking, based on our feedback, at ways to be able to involve a greater number of residents and take input throughout the process. And there will also be some upcoming, because of the actual application being in process, once that review package has been completed, there will be an opportunity for residents to comment on that, and then there'll be further opportunities going forward. So again, as Councilmember Stewart mentioned, if you go to redmond.gov/ph, we'll keep that information updated so that you can follow and engage and find out all the different ways to be involved and to shape this project, which is going to take years. So we're really just still at the beginning stages, but appreciate us being able to move forward on this. Thanks.
I see no other comments or questions. This is a roll call vote, starting with Council President Kritzer.
Aye.
No.
Aye.
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 Aye. No.
And that passes 5-2. Thank you for the discussion. Appreciate it. We have coming up next 2 public hearings. The first one is a public hearing for AM number 24-138 to conduct a public hearing and adopt a resolution approving a petition filed by Microsoft to amend Community Facilities District CFD 2014-01, and then we will have another public hearing over the other CFD. I will read the resolution into the record. Resolution number 1590, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Redmond, Washington, approving a petition by Microsoft Corporation to amend Redmond Community Facilities District number 2014-01, modifying the purpose of said community facilities district to include financing the construction of pedestrian bicycle bridge connecting the east side of 156th Avenue Northeast to Redmond Technology Station and to the west side of State Route 520. Canopy coverage for waiting areas at Redmond Technology Station, shell and core requirements for a transit office public waiting area near the parking garage at Redmond Technology Station, additional paving for buses and vans to wait and to drop off and pick up passengers moving between the light rail system and the bus system, accessibility features at Redmond Technology Station such as timetable displays with text-to-speech functionality and tactile guidance indicators to assist those with visual impairments to navigate the site, making findings in support of the amendment, and incorporating terms and conditions set forth in the petition. And with that, I will open the public hearing. We have 2 people signed up for the first public hearing, Wanmeng Zhao and then Don Marcy. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and staff. I am Yuan Meng, a resident of Overlake Village who works at Microsoft, though I will be expressing my own beliefs, experiences, and values. I would like to thank the city for considering resolution number 1590, which would finance the addition of accessibility features at Redmond Technology Station. I support the resolution. One of my roles at work is to improve the accessibility of my team's website for visually impaired users. In turn, those users are able to navigate the site, often with a keyboard and screen reader, and have access to all of the content. In a similar way, adding accessibility features to Redmond Technology Station would allow visually impaired users to navigate the physical site and more independently as well. Secondly, these features do not help only visually impaired users. For example, when it comes to my website, my improvements at work help users who prefer to use or are confined to use a keyboard instead of a mouse. The continued ability to navigate around the entire site. Similarly, the proposed text-to-speech functionality at the station would not only help visually impaired users, but also users who, let's say, prefer to listen to the information rather than read it. In closing, I support resolution number 1590 and thank the city for considering it.
Next is Don Marcy.
Thank you, Mayor Bernie. My name is Donald Marcy. My address is 524 2nd Avenue in Seattle. I'm appearing on behalf of Microsoft Corporation. This amendment to CFD 2014-1 is being done in order to fully implement the 3-party agreement that was entered into by Microsoft, the City of Redmond, and Sound Transit in 2013. That agreement provided for certain enhancements to Redmond Technology Station, and one of them was wayfinding to assist people in finding their way around. At the time we formed the CFD, we didn't really have the details on what the wayfinding would consist of. So at this point, when they've been determined, we're bringing forward this amendment to include these accessibility features for those who are visually impaired. So we would ask that you please adopt the resolution. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Not during the public hearing, thank you. There is no one who signed up to speak remotely, and with that, any other people want to speak during the public hearing? Going once, going twice. The public hearing is closed, and with that, is there a motion to approve, hang on, give me the right thing, AM number 24-138, resolution number 1590?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote, starting with Council President Kritzer.
Aye.
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 And with that, the motion passes 7-0. So we're looking the same. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing for AM number 24-139. Conduct a public hearing and adopt a resolution approving a petition filed by Microsoft to amend Community Facilities District CFD 2016-01. Is resolution number 1591, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Redmond, Washington, approving a petition by Microsoft Corporation to amend Redmond Community Facilities District number 2016-01, modifying the purpose of said Community Facilities District to include financing the construction of the extension of shared use path on south side of Northeast 40th Street from 163rd Avenue Northeast to 172nd Avenue Northeast, and related improvements, perform ADA ramp improvements, and push-button activation for crosswalks at select locations to be determined, install adaptive traffic signal controls at multiple intersections along 148th Avenue Northeast, 156th Avenue Northeast, and Northeast 40th Street in the Overlake neighborhood, install bike lane improvements on 150th Avenue Northeast. Work includes pavement widening, new curb and gutter, and associated stormwater improvements, making findings in support of the amendment and incorporating terms and conditions set forth in the petition. The public hearing is now open. I have the sign-in sheet for members of the public to speak in person tonight. When I call your name, you'll have come up to the podium and have 3 minutes to address the council. And I, once again, have 2 people signed up. I have Donald Marcy and Yuangmeng Zhao.
Again, for the record, my name is Donald Marcy. My address is 524 2nd Avenue in Seattle. And I'm appearing on behalf of Microsoft Corporation. This CFD 2016-1 was set up as a means for Microsoft to fund some public infrastructure improvements in the city of Redmond. Those improvements have all been completed pretty much, except for the monitoring that's going on with Northeast 40th Street stormwater trunk line extension. There's still money left in the CFD. More was contributed than what has been utilized, and the city had some additional improvements they were interested in doing. Microsoft, representative of Microsoft met with the city staff, and several were selected as additional items to be included in this CFD, and so we are amending the CFD in order to build 4 additional improvements that Mayor Bernie read: the extension of the shared use path, some ADA ramp improvements, some adaptive signal technology for certain streets, as well as bike lane improvements on Northeast 150th. So we would ask that you approve this resolution so that Microsoft may continue to fund some improvements for the city.
Thank you. Yuangmeng Zhao.
Good evening again, Mayor, council members, and staff. I am Yuemeng, a resident of Overlake Village who sometimes walks along 156th Avenue Northeast to get home from work. I support resolution number 1591, which would finance several projects around Overlake, improving the experiences of those walking, biking, and rolling around the area, no matter whether they are commuting to there, through there, or just getting some exercise. However, I would also love to see improved pedestrian signals along 156th Avenue Northeast. I currently notice some intersections where the pedestrian light is slow to change, even when there is little to no opposing traffic, or when the same direction car signal light is green. In turn, I feel less incentive to walk home and often take the bus a few stops instead. I'm sure some of my neighbors drive home for a similar reason. In conclusion, though I still support resolution number 1591, I would like the signal improvements to not only be for the purpose of reducing car congestion and pollution, but to also be for the purpose of improving pedestrian and bicyclist efficiency. I believe that through improving pedestrian and bicycle signals, that more people would be incentivized to walk, bike, or roll more, or even start recommending that to others. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no one who requested to speak remotely. The public hearing is now closed. Is there a motion to approve AM number 24-139, resolution number 1591?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Anderson.
This is a piece of information I actually wanted to say thank you to Ms. Stewart and Director Cochran for following up on a question that I had last week regarding the commitment to art in these facilities. The response to that, just in quick summary, these projects do not qualify for our 1% for art policy. However, they do tend to have an investment from private funds through the CFD function to enhance the aesthetics in the area. So I just wanted to clarify that. And I appreciate Ms. Stewart's response and Ms. Cochran. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fields.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just want to express my appreciation to Microsoft, to the two speakers tonight, to City of Redmond staff and the mayor, and most likely to the City Council. I think the most recent speaker summarized my feelings right at the end of his comments when he said something like this, a vision such as this, and the actions associated with that vision will encourage other people to use multimodal forms of transportation. And I think that that is a huge statement, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate being able to vote on this. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments this evening, Council President?
I'll just echo the thanks from my colleague, especially to Microsoft for being willing to take funds once we finish the initial projects and to say, hey, we had efficiencies and we can invest in more in our community. And just for the ongoing partnership, I think it's really cool to see how Redmond and Microsoft can be leading the way and showing how public-private partnerships work. We were one of the first to use the ability to form community facilities districts in the state, and are still one of the few across the state that actually are doing this. So hopefully we can not only continue to build this work out, but also inspire others to do the same. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Salahuddin.
And just to add on to that, it has been an honor, myself, Council President Kritzer, and Councilmember Stewart, as supervisors on the Community Facilities District, to engage in this public-private partnership. So thank you to Microsoft, thank you to the community members who came and spoke today as well, and really excited about the work moving forward.
Thank you. Any others? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote, starting with Council President Kritzer.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
And that passes 7-0. Thank you very much. I'm really excited to see what's next for the CFDs. Our next item of business is Ombuds reports. The month of August is Councilmember Salahuddin. I'll allow him to finish up if he needs to, and then Councilmember Anderson for the month of September. Councilmember Salahuddin.
I have nothing from August. I'll let Councilmember Anderson go.
Great.
Thank you.
Councilmember Anderson.
Great. Thank you. For this month, it's been pretty busy as of today regarding the housing project we just discussed. Just to go back through the beginning of the month in case I missed any, we had several comments sent in to us on the I-2117 measure, question regarding construction in the downtown area and a concern related to school availability for folks living downtown. A question about the site plan entitlement process for the Plymouth Housing Project. We had 3 emails on hashtag break-ins, of which one I responded, and I also reached out to the owner of this facility who had requested a meeting. We heard about a resident experiencing some utility billing issues, which appear to have been resolved by staff. So thank you, staff, on that, and some additional comments regarding opinions of his experience attending some meetings that were from council members, and requests. We had requests related to a question, I guess an inquiry related to rezoning a street for apartments. We had an inquiry on fee waivers for the housing project, for the Plymouth Housing Project in general, fee waivers. We had several requests to propose the allocation that we saw earlier this evening, including a comment regarding the difference in value in the resolution and compared to the letter that we had agreed with Arch. So thank you for catching that to the residents who emailed in about that. There were 60 of those, and then we also had a comments received regarding picking mushrooms in the watershed. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other ombuds items this evening? Councilmember Stewart?
Thank you. I attended the Budget Priorities in Community Listening session, which was hosted by Eastside for All and several of the community partners. 4 budget priorities of that coalition are full funding for ARCH, expanded human services, expanded investment in co-creation of community engagement, and support for BIPOC-owned businesses. Since this was a conversation the team was invited to, I tried to take good notes and share them with you. Let me know if you have questions. I was able to stop by the town hall with King County Councilmember Sarah Perry. I saw lots of great staff presentations and residents getting good information from King County staff there. I helped a resident navigate the process for requesting a proclamation from the mayor's office. I spoke with a member of the Senior Advisory Committee regarding their experiences so far at the Redmond Senior and Community Center. That place is hopping. Be sure to check it out if you haven't. At my office hours, we answered questions regarding a downtown business, the automated license plate readers, and the comprehensive plan. Received really positive feedback from cycling enthusiasts who reviewed the transportation improvement program. Council's going to have another touch base on that soon. The specific project inquiries that I received, I have shared with staff, and they're helping to evaluate ahead of our next touch base on that. Last week, we had the bird walk with the Audubons. That was awesome. I think Councilmember Salhuddin may have organized it. Was that fair? Okay, yes, absolutely. Thank you for organizing that. It was great. Councilmember Nueve Kamina and Councilmember Kritzer also attended. I attended the 9/11 memorial here at City Hall. Really great turnout, especially from the team, the staff here in Redmond, and attended a lunch and learn with the Sound Cities Association regarding the Crisis Center procurement process. This was a really helpful webinar. If you've been knowing that the Crisis Center procurement process is kicking off, it's going to get going, but you've been meaning to get a handle on what's going on there, I will go ahead and share the resources when the slides are shared out. I will share them with the team. And the committee that is going to actually be reviewing the applications, the responses to the RFPs, I should say, is going to include our very own Brooke Buckingham. So very excited to have her there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Salahuddin, did you have some follow-up as well?
Yeah, I should have mentioned this, but this happened in September, so it wasn't in the August ombuds. I had outreach from a student who was interested in getting more involved with local government, so I'm going to schedule a meeting with him. Had more conversations with community members interested in AEDs in our parks, so continuing work with our parks team to look into that. Councilmember Stewart mentioned that bird walk, really incredible opportunity to work with Eastside Audubon to look at, the surrounding areas and what we tend to overlook when we're walking around, and then had the opportunity to connect with Lake Washington Schools Foundation on some more youth engagement opportunities.
Thank you. Councilmember Forsyth.
Thank you. I had some conversations with the folks at Second Story Rep regarding the LTAC funding, conversations with the earlier speaker tonight concerned about housing development in her community, and this was in particular about tree removal. I've sent that on to staff for follow-up, and I think we're still waiting for a response on that one. I've had some conversations with some community members around our data privacy policy that we're working to develop, conversations with the Audubon folks about light pollution, and I will be meeting this week with the Redmond High School marching band director about ways that to potentially partner for getting the marching band some uniforms. If you don't know, this is the first year of having a marching band at the high school, so that's pretty exciting. Had some conversations with folks around the grass lawn sidewalk improvements that are happening by the tennis courts. I believe that is separate from the parking lot repairs, but I will get clarification on that. I've had follow-up conversations with the folks at Hashtag about their safety measures that they're taking internally at the store moving forward, and I hope those conversations are still moving forward with the city. I also wanted to share that through our new stipend that council gets, I used that money to take a CPR AED first aid training class with the fine folks of Medic One. And there are 2 more opportunities if anyone wants to take those classes. One is September 19th in Kirkland. And the final one of the year, as far as is online, is September 24th here at City Hall. So get signed up for some CPR classes and first aid and AED training. And I also used that funding as well to attend the Health Point event, which was fantastic. And they're a great resource in our community right here in the Together Center, providing medical care for regardless of your ability to pay.
Thank you, Council Vice President. Council President.
I had the chance to talk with some different residents at my office hours in the last week. Talked about issues around mobility in the city, in particular ideas around how to make it safer to bike and walk. Also some thoughts around parking and questions around whether certain areas that aren't signed for parking could be to allow for more turnover. Also had some questions around tree policy and tree removal as part of developments in downtown, and talked with that resident a little bit more about that. Also had some questions about how commission appointments work, and answered some questions on that. And then also got to speak with a senior about some of their current experiences and some of the needs that they're seeing for our seniors in our community. I also was able to attend the District 3 for King County Councilmember Sarah Perry, her town hall, and was invited to offer some opening remarks. It was really wonderful also to hear from some of the King County staff that are leading Doors Open, the new cultural arts funding, leader from the County on Behavioral Health and Crisis Care, and then also a leader from the Lands and Waters Division. And kudos to our own Councilmember Salahuddin, who organized that as part of his day job. So great to have him there, both as a council member and as in his day job. But it was really great to see a lot of our community come out for that. And then today I did jump into answer just because I had gotten the information from Director Helland, and I wanted to make sure that the community had it send a response to about 50 people, everyone who emailed us about the item that was on the agenda up till today, up till about 4 o'clock today. So sent that email and can make sure that anyone who came after that gets that as well. So thanks.
Thank you. Any other ombuds items? Councilmember Nueva Camino.
Thank you, Mayor. I had several conversations around data privacy in the last couple of weeks. Also had conversations while walking around downtown discussing concern over school capacity for additional residents moving into the area. Due to the unfortunate recent fatality from a pedestrian due to high speed, several conversations in the last day today about that and concerns, especially living downtown, and having a concern that it's wider spread than just downtown. Also had several conversations in the last 2 weeks, and it's perfectly timed because I have a conversation scheduled with Deputy Chief Giacone on this, is the upcoming election and the division that we're seeing, and what steps we're taking to prepare for that, and kind of what the prep is. Also on our Audubon walk that we took last week, happy to report that the salmon has returned to our own Sammamish River in our own backyard. I'm very passionate about making sure that we do protect all of our green and blue spaces, and so that we've got that for generations to come as much as possible. I got to go back over the weekend as well and take some of my neighbors and say, hey, look, this is what's right here. And they had no idea, which was a lot of fun. And also on point with the fact that we've got a marching band. Of course, I've got a senior that's going to be graduating this year. If you do need me, my unofficial office hours are Friday nights at 7 p.m. at the high school watching football, and also cheering on not only the football, but also our dance team, our cheer team, and our new marching band.
And so when is the next game?
This Friday. It's actually a great game because it is against Lake Washington. So we do have Redmond residents on both sides.
Great. And that is at Redmond High School?
This week is at Redmond High School.
And what time is that game?
7 p.m.
In case the weather's nice and anyone wants to come out and cheer on the Mustangs.
Come on out.
Are there any other ombuds items this evening? I'm seeing none. Next, we have committee reports. Are there any committee reports for this evening? Council President?
I attended, along with Council Vice President Forsyth, a joint meeting of the transportation boards for King County. So that included the Seashore, the Skateboard, and ETP, which is our board, the East Side Transportation Partnership. So basically North and South, and then the East Side, all coming together. And we met actually at the PSRC, the Puget Sound Regional Council headquarters. And it was a really interesting meeting where we got to talk about some of the long-term planning for our region, the trends that we're seeing across kind of the whole area. And it was great, a really great conversation, really interesting updates from Sound Transit, from PSRC, from Metro. There's a lot of celebration since there's just recently been opening of the new Link light rail station in Linwood. And it was really interesting to hear about some of the efforts that Metro's making with that community, and I made me think about what we might preview for the future when, as Redmond gets more connected in on the light rail, and they change some of the bus service since they'll do some deduplication, was that they were explaining that they've added these transit ambassadors who'll be at some of the most kind of frequently used bus areas to explain to people where routes have changed, how they can access transit and still access those same routes. So that was really interesting, and Metro also covered some of their more recent efforts in terms of safety and security, both in terms of having more security officers in key areas and looking at certain corridors to make transit more safe, and then also being able to do, really pairing, creating teams of people who include folks who may have lived experience with behavioral health or homelessness issues, who can be able to support those that are engaging with transit there. So very interesting. And one thing that I will note that I also wrote down and took away was that is that you can, they're doing an effort through Orca now, where if you get a day pass fare, there's a $2 fee reduction that you can get. So if you want to get a cheaper Orca pass or you need access to more affordable transit, they're trying to make that happen. One of the other things that they have is that Metro is unveiling is bringing back certain routes that had been suspended or certain amounts of transit. Also launching the G line rapid ride transit in Seattle, and increasing Snoqualmie Valley transport. So just a little regional update, but really interesting to hear and to look at kind of how the growth projections and how we think about where our region is going fits in with our transit planning, and then getting to hear about what are the concerns and interests from folks around the region, from ferries to buses to light rail, and thinking about how we fit in. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other committee reports? We'll go to Council Vice President and then Councilmember Salahuddin.
Thank you. I just passed along the Orca Day Pass program graphic that we got if you want to share it with your networks from that ETP joint meeting. I also attended with Councilmember Nueva Camina the Disability Board meeting where we approved medical expenses for our retired police and fire. And then we also had our final Alternative Crisis Response Subcommittee meeting where I think once we are able to bring that whole conversation forward, everyone's going to be pretty happy with where we've landed on that. And I'll just leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Salahuddin.
Thank you. Just really quick on a meeting that I attended a few weeks back with the One Redmond Foundation. Two items to cover both events. One was the annual Redmond Wine Walk, which was co-hosted by the One Redmond Foundation on August 23rd, and according to staff, it went very well. And then we're in the midst of working on planning an upcoming robot combat competition, which was hosted last year as well, and T-Mobile has agreed to sponsor this competition. So a new sponsor this year, and Amazon has indicated interest, not fully finalized, but there is a lot of corporate interest in bringing this competition to fruition.
Thank you. Committee reports. Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you. Really excited to hear soon what's the other subcommittee on alternative crisis response has in store for us. The other public safety subcommittee regarding funding of public safety, which includes Council President Kritzer, Councilmember Salahuddin, and myself, has met several times in the last couple of weeks. I attended the Growth Management Planning Board. We had briefings related to planning in collaboration with local tribes, which of course, if you take a quick read at our if you take a look at our Redmond 2050 comprehensive plan, you'll see in the omnibus package we did get significant collaboration from the Snoqualmie tribes to make our plan better. We also at the board discussed the approach to Sound Transit's light rail station planning in Everett and the role in transit-oriented development around not just placemaking, but place keeping, and making sure we are retaining the things that make places great as they experience redevelopment. We had the final meeting of the Association of Washington Cities Legislative Priorities Committee. I have shared the full document with the council and mayor. The top line priorities for this upcoming legislative session include lifting the 1% property tax, public safety funding, behavioral health, and infrastructure funding. And a few of Redmond's other priorities, such as comprehensive recycling reform and funding our affordable housing, are also some of the policy areas that AWC will invest time and staffing resources in Olympia this year. We had the Sound Cities Association Public Issues Committee. We met in person, which doesn't happen all that much. So it was great to be in the city of Mercer Island for that and to be in their community center and kind of be thinking about cool new community center spaces. During that meeting, we had a presentation from King County on new resources for planning for strong urban tree canopies. Redmond is, of course, one of the cities with the most robust tree code in the county, but there is a really helpful matrix in that toolkit or in the toolkit that's being developed that kind of inventories the tree code features of each jurisdiction in the county. And I can help anyone find that if they're interested in seeing more details. We, of course, are going to be coming back to our tree code here in Redmond in a little bit. And lastly, we had a special caucus of the Sound Cities Association for the King County Growth Management Planning Council. Our full board meeting is actually tomorrow. We have a particular piece of action we don't expect to take until October, but we were just getting our ducks in a row regarding the reconciliation of some growth targets that needs to take place in order to keep, to both deal with the question at hand and keep everyone on track to get their comprehensive plans adopted by the end of the year. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other committee reports? Council President?
I will just do one follow-up about the subcommittees, since we're all in open session, can discuss this, is that next week we have on the agenda following up on the Public Safety Funding Committee, but really, as we were discussing it in our subcommittee, we realized that it would make sense for the other subcommittee to be able to present about what you all have been discussing, since we're really discussing how to fund these positions, as well as other items that we'll bring forward after discussing with staff. So just wanted to flag for the other subcommittee members that hopefully you can convene. I know COO Files is preparing the materials for next week, and I think it'll be our subcommittee's recommendation that there's time made for the other subcommittee to be able to report out on the discussions thus far, and there'll be some attachments that come from your subcommittee or from the outcomes. So just wanted to flag that for others, since the way that these work, we're not able to talk outside of open session. So wanted to let you all know that and let the community know that next week we'll be having some exciting discussions about both our financial forecast and how we'll fund public safety going forward in a variety of different ways.
Thank you. Any other committee reports this evening? I don't have a committee report, but I have a big thanks to Leadership East Side. On Friday, I had the privilege once again of joining mayors from around the East Side on stage and joined our Councilmember Nueva Camino, who's on the Board of Leadership East Side as well. And it was a great turnout, that over 170 people there. And it's always wonderful to share what Redmond's doing, what the region's doing, and really see the up-and-coming leaders in our region. So great fun, and yay, Leadership East Side. I think they're heading toward their 20th anniversary, so super exciting year for them. With that, there is no unfinished business, but there is new business. The next item on the agenda is new business, role of the ombudsperson. And there is a possibility of approving this item, and then I think the intent would be for it to go into the council rules of procedure. But I will turn it over to the council president to speak on this item.
Thank you. Last week at Council Talk Time, I had put this item on the agenda, but we didn't have the chance to attach it and sent it out quite late. So wanted to find a time soon after to follow up. And since it looked like we had time on the agenda, popped it on here so we could continue our discussion. And I believe we kind of ran out of time for council members to share their thoughts, but for the listening public who didn't listen all the way to the end of our last meeting, this document is one that we've been working on to improve our shared understanding and expectations of what the role of the ombudsperson is and how it works with some of the different mechanics. So apologies to the public, but we're going to do a little sausage making here in this meeting because we do all our work in open session. There's a couple pieces that are covered within here. One is around how we can work with our new legislative coordinator. We haven't had a role like this in the past, so part of this document is actually clarifying how each of us can use that position to be able to develop our responses to the public and gather information from the staff. So it's really the goal of the ombuds is to be able to gather information, correct information around answering the questions from residents about city services or policies, and we hope that we'll be able to use the legislative coordinator for this. The other pieces are just kind of how to navigate the process with the council at redmond.gov inbox and the mayor council at redmond.gov inbox so that we are really clear in the way that we are engaging with the public. You'll see on page 3 that we also had some suggested kind of standardized response suggestions. We talked about this at a previous touch on this, about kind of the timing and this general interest in being able to get back to members of the public quickly, but that sometimes it takes time to research the accurate answer. And so in talking with our legislative coordinator, we came up with the idea that, we could expect within, I think we updated it to about 96 hours. So within 4 days to just send an email that all of us would agree that we will send a standardized response, essentially saying, thank you for emailing us, and we will be getting back to you if there is an inquiry that we need to research and answer on. And so that way you kind of have that to be able to do. So anyway, this is a guide, and I'll open it up for questions, suggestions. I know there were some brought up last time. Feel free to bring them up again. And I also just wanted to bring up, how we use this document and what our expectations are. So happy to hear everyone's thoughts on that. And I'll open it up for suggestions, amendments, and comments.
Councilmember Stewart.
Thanks so much. As the council president said, we kind of ran out of time, so I had submitted a couple questions to council leadership over email. The first one was on the definition in that language. It describes the definition of ombuds as to receive complaints, and I had suggested that maybe we could use something more neutral. That actually would require an amendment to our rules because the word complaints is in our rules. So I'm no longer going to pursue that one. It's just a little more work than it might be worth at this exact moment. I do think that this document is still missing clarity on when it's appropriate to defer a question to staff. And I think we discussed having a table on here, and I can share some examples if need be, but I do worry a little bit too much that we are deferring to staff in ways that are sometimes borderline. And I think we were going to have a discussion on how to hold the team accountable and what to do in a moment when we're not sure if the standard on the page is being adhered to. From my perspective, those are some of the top questions I have. Thanks.
Councilmember Fields?
Yeah, a couple things, and one just came up with Councilmember Stewart. I never really thought about confiding or getting information from staff as deferring, and maybe therein lies part of the problem. If the ombuds, my understanding of the ombuds, is that person that will see it through, has the accountability, responsibility to resolve, and that might mean that they need to go get information from people to inform how they make a recommendation to resolve. So I do think that there is perhaps a practice where we say, okay, I'm passing this off, and I don't think we should do that. The other that just came up, so I was winging it. But my primary concern with ombuds and this document is there are those issues that sort of transcend, perhaps threaten leadership, either the mayor or the mayor's staff or council. And we don't have a way to resolve those issues. I'm not suggesting that we make them go away, but we certainly have the power or the capability to make them go away. And how do we hold ourselves accountable? And I'll give you an example. I did get a phone call earlier about issues at Redmond and say, I would like to perhaps escalate this to the state auditor. If that actually became a formal complaint, I actually don't know how the ombuds process would resolve that. Would we say, would we give them the information to do it? Would we assist them in doing it? Or would we perhaps blunt it? So the accountability of resolving these issues is not clear to me in this document and in the practices that we've used.
Other comments or questions, Council President?
Speaking to the first issue around when we should defer on a question to staff, I do think I would love to have clarity from across the council in terms of practice. My hope would be if we get a question that does ask about a city policy or practice, whether it's about zoning or about a current project, is that we do have a first touch, or as a practice is that we go and we make sure that we get the information so that way we're providing residents with accurate information about what's going on rather than being able to share kind of our own personal opinions, which, as is clear in the document, is against our council rules. But I think there's been some questions around, whether we have to. So I do think it would be helpful to have a shared understanding, and maybe a table would be helpful in this document of, when it would be expected that you would go and research versus as in terms of kind of the standard responses, there is one that is, someone may just be sending us their opinion on something and there's not actually a question in the email, in which case it may just be letting them know that we've heard their feedback. And there may not be actually any answer to research. Or they may be asking what the council's opinion on something is, and referring back to, again, if the council doesn't have an opinion on that, then in my opinion, the ombuds should just say that the council has not taken a position on that, and if they'd like to individually share their opinion, they can do so separately. Yeah, I think we do need to work that out, and I'm curious if other council members have a thought in terms of the process and expectation for especially using Deidre or other staff to research answers to concerns.
Any council members have thoughts on that? Councilmember Stewart?
Sure, I guess I'll chime in and maybe offer up an example that maybe could get us to the different pathways. So we opened a new community center, and we've been getting a lot of feedback on the fee structure of that facility. So I think that feedback on operations from a resident who observes something going on, maybe has an idea for operations, that might be something as an ombuds I would want to pass along to the Parks Director. A critique of the current fee structure is something that I would, first of all, thank folks for their feedback. And also, I wouldn't send that along to the Parks Director because it's a council cost recovery policy that is dictating what's going on there. So that is maybe one where I wouldn't pass it on to the Parks Director. But maybe if there was a suggestion or a question regarding a policy that's active at the community center that is not a policy I deal with frequently and not one I'm very familiar with, I might engage through the legislative coordinator, the Parks Director, to help craft a response to that resident.
Any other thoughts on this? Council Vice President, do you have thoughts?
I do have thoughts. I'm just taking some notes here because there's some great stuff that I think we can add to the document as it currently stands. I love the idea of us adding a example section as we're just talking about with, do we pass it to staff? Maybe I'm not as familiar with that policy, so I need some help from Deidre to help me sort that out. So I'm taking notes on all these great ideas. I like the idea of the first touch for accuracy on an adopted policy. The role of ombuds, as I see it, is the unified voice of the council, and you're responding as the unified voice. And if you want to respond in a personal capacity, sometimes I do that below and say, and now for my personal response. Sometimes I'll send a follow-up email immediately after with a personal response. I think it's really critical that we maintain the voice of the ombuds as the collective voice of the whole of the council. So there's always the opportunity for folks to follow up with their personal thoughts separately. But I like where we're headed with this conversation. I'm glad we're having this conversation because it's been a very arduous process for the last, 5 years since I've been on council. So I think this is something we've tried to undertake many times, and throw out your ideas, throw out your input, because this is our chance to sort it out and get it right. We've tried it many times in the past, and we're still doing this. So let's have all the ideas on the table.
Well, thank you. And just for historical significance, when I joined the council in 2016, we were also having these discussions. So it is a, the public may or may not know, it's actually, we, mayor, council, get questions from our community of any wide variety of sorts. And so there's not necessarily a straight path, a straight formula to answering all of them. And so that is why the council is wrangling with this issue to ensure that we're giving the community the best information possible in response. So I appreciate the discussion. And I have Councilmember Fields.
So appreciate that, Council Vice President Forsyth. Want all ideas on the table. I'm wondering if it's possible we could have staff. I don't know if that's a joint effort between our legislative analyst and the finance department. Evaluate or investigate the possibility of hiring a professional, independent ombuds type of resource to audit or review our responses periodically, twice a year, once a quarter, and give feedback to the council on ideas or suggestions of where we missed or where we did well, or provide us improvements. I don't know that those resources exist. I have to believe that they do. We're not the only jurisdiction and only entity that utilizes the idea of an ombuds. You can go outside government and find ombuds. So I have to believe that there is some professional help out there. And again, I'll reiterate, my concern is the accountability and the independence, and somebody with years of experience, professional type person who could say, yes, you've done well, but also here are some areas where you did not hold yourself accountable, and you need to do these ideas, whatever those recommendations would be. And I don't know what that would cost, but somebody could look into it.
Councilmember Anderson?
Thank you. I had a question about the meaning of some of the language. It says in replies continuing beyond the assigned ombuds month, uses the language, the council member should remain the point of contact for as long as reasonably manageable, and I want to know what that means.
Council President?
So we looked into this because we realized sometimes we'll start on a chain with someone and then your ombuds month ends, but the answer comes later, or they follow up with multiple questions. And because of OPMA, we realized that if multiple ombuds keep taking it on, at some point you create a serial meeting if you have more than 3 ombuds take it on. So the suggestion is that if you started a chain with someone, you stay on it. It doesn't have to be on the same issue. Or if the constituent starts a new chain with the current ombuds or asked another one, you don't have to follow up with them, but on that same chain. And I think we put as reasonably manageable, because you could pass it on to the next ombuds if at some point it was 6 months later and it felt a bit onerous, or whatever reason, you could work it out as long as it was within the confines of OPMA. So I think it's just generally that you would stick with one chain if you're on it.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that clarification. I think it's interesting to hear part of that story. It sounds like one of the problems that we have is that we rotate the position. So just to put that on the table as a thought. And then in terms of concerns I have, and I think this comes a little bit in line with what Mr. Fields is suggesting about accountability, I would totally support outside input on that, but as well as the idea that there aren't any consequences here and I speak on my own behalf because right now I have 60 emails to respond to, and email is a very difficult thing for me to take on. So there's quite a bit of time stress that's added. We don't get paid extra for this. So one of the thoughts behind this would be how would this be used to be an improvement in how council manages itself. So.
Councilmember Salahuddin?
Thank you. Also want to support what Councilmember Fields mentioned on an independent audit. My question is around what other cities are doing, and if there is sort of a document like this where other cities, locals, Bellevue, Kirkland, Sammamish, et cetera, or even across the state are doing with practices with ombuds persons. To my knowledge, some other cities don't have their council members respond in this capacity. I do think it's a good practice to have council respond to residents, but also echoing what Councilmember Anderson just mentioned, the rotation does tend to lead to potential issues and challenges. So just wondering what other cities might be doing with regards to their positions.
Yeah, there are cities that use their staff member to respond totally. There are cities that have their council president do it totally. I actually don't know if another city does a rotation like this, but I think that we can ask our staff to check around. But remember, the staff member for the council is a new thing as well, so that once again was not an opportunity until recently. Council President?
I will say that in trying to do this document and trying to fix something that clearly council members have been trying to noodle over for a while, it's come up in my mind whether we just overall need to review the whole concept, especially now that we do have a legislative coordinator for the first time, and we did look into it, and it seems like we could potentially create a mechanism by which, if we wanted to have a staff member help with actually drafting or sending responses, and we could just upend the whole thing. And for example, we could say that council leadership, along with the legislative coordinator, reviews what legislative coordinator does to get out responses to the public and centralize it. So I'm just going to throw that idea out there. If we wanted to totally change the process to address some of the inconsistencies and handoffs between different things. And if we really wanted to pilot it, I would volunteer to help with that process. I did also want to follow up on the issues raised around accountability, which I think are really important for us if we're continuing on with this process, which I think is also for us. I think this document does need a section on accountability. So if people don't follow, I think it should be clear what are the guidelines and what are the must-dos within this document, and also how the council responds to hold each other accountable if, say, we don't feel that a response represents the council's perspective, or if there are certain expectations that we all end up agreeing upon that don't get met. So I think it would be good to be clear on what our accountability mechanisms will be, so that way we're all clear-eyed on that if we wanted to bring that up at any point. And curious to get others' thoughts on that.
Councilmember Anderson?
I think there was a comment that you mentioned, the mayor, that this might be adopted into rules of procedure. Two questions are: is there an item on the floor at the moment to adopt? Okay, and then generally, the sense of this that I get is that this is guidance and not a rule. As a consequence for not meeting some of the deadlines, what would actually be a perverse incentive is would be having somebody else take over that email for you. Made Mr. Fields laugh. But that's essentially, if you as a council member are unable to handle the load of emails that comes in, then it's more of a challenge to get help, especially with OPMA and those kinds of things. So I'll come back to that thought that there's maybe the rotation is something we need to think about a little bit more. Thank you.
And I would just offer that if council members are feeling overburdened by the flow, there is a staff member to help. And so I think that probably is something that needs to be intentionally spelled out for you all.
I think that the staff member is fantastic, and I have been supportive of one since I started on council for this purpose. So very good comment on that. Thank you. And thank you to Deidre as well.
Other comments? Other comments, yeah. Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you. I think being an ombuds every few months makes me a better council member. So I just want to, I may be in a minority here amongst the group, but I'm not yet ready to give up on it because I think it's an important role, and I think it's helpful. I want to take the conversation back actually to a really important question raised by Council Vice President Forsyth, on that unified voice. So and actually maybe she didn't ask the question, but I'm going to ask the question on the role of the ombud is to. Sorry, I'm going to read it from this document so that I don't get it incorrect. It is the duty of the ombuds to respond on behalf of the council with information that reflects a council position, not personal view. And should the ombud or any council member wish to share a personal view with a constituent, they may email that constituent directly, providing that they clearly state it is a personal opinion. So I think in terms of the how one would share a personal opinion while also being ombuds, I think that this is suggesting a separate email, which is fine. It's helpful to have clarity. And that seems to be getting at one of the questions raised by Councilmember Fields. So I guess I would be interested to know if we're keeping the process, which I hope we are, and I can speak about ad nauseum, but I won't. Is this something that we can relate, or that we could all agree to? And that is about halfway down the second page.
Council Vice President.
I believe that's actually already in our rules of procedure. So by being a council member, you have already de facto agreed to that.
Councilmember Stewart.
Thanks, appreciate that. And it's worth, I think we're having a conversation about whether or not that still fits. So for me, this fits.
Council Vice President.
I will add the part about the separate email is not part of the rules of procedure, but I don't believe, maybe I'm misspeaking here, but I appreciate that. Thank you.
One thing I would offer from my perspective in the office is that some people email a multitude of people and addresses. So sometimes it'll be straight to council, sometimes it'll be mayor council, sometimes it'll be mayor council, council, and Council Vice President Forsyth, and that. One of the things that we do struggle with is ensuring that emails are answered. If they come to my office, I answer them. If they come to, sometimes they'll do council, but they'll also do mayor, we'll answer them, and CCU. So there's some clarity that I think we need to get to, because sometimes we will respond and then there's another response as well that can contradict the city's response. So that's one of the areas that probably won't get to the solution tonight, but that is a real challenge for my team in creating clarity for our community. Council President.
Yes, I would say the section that's about the mayor council, and then it talks about kind of the different iterations, because sometimes we'll all get emailed, including the mayor. So in effect, it's at mayor council, or it'll be at mayor and at council. It's attempting to get at that. And I would just say bottom line, what my hope would be as an outcome of all of these conversations is that we do have clarity on the process, and in particular, that we can coordinate effectively of whoever is the ombuds, especially also with the mayor's office and with the staff, to make sure that we're getting clear messages back to our constituents. Because if the mayor's office responds and then we respond and there's differing messages, then that's confusing the constituent. And ultimately, it's about really serving our public effectively. So I think being able to figure out how we coordinate best with the mayor's office. So my hope is in the mayor council section, I don't know if it's exactly written clearly, but that it communicates when the mayor's office likely will take the lead, but also when council members who are the ombuds might want to reach out to the mayor's office to coordinate to make sure, okay, are you sending this response or am I sending this response? Which I believe Councilmember Nueva Camino had brought up a question about this the other night, so I'll cede the floor.
Councilmember Nueva Camino.
Thank you. And Council President, thank you for bringing that point up, because one of the words that you just used was if the mayor's office is likely. And we need this to be like cut and dry, like, no, this is what is going to happen. If it is addressed to mayor council, then mayor office answers it. There's some ambiguity still in here around emails addressing only council, but is addressed to mayor council. At that point, especially experiencing this as a newer council member, it is very gray. And it creates the question of then where does that come from? Now, hearing from mayor's office this evening that it creates a bit of confusion and who really deals with it is the community member that's reaching out and possibly getting mixed answers. So I absolutely need this to be cut and dry. And I think that looking for those who are going to be coming up behind us, They need that, and that's on us to create that precedence and say, no, if it is addressed to mayor council, then mayor office responds. Even if they are addressing it to the council, then we need to do that communication behind, but not have it crossing for the community member.
Got Councilmember Fields, then Councilmember Anderson, then Council President Kritzer.
Yeah, I'm glad that this mayor-council email has come up. I'm going to come from a different perspective here, and I appreciate Councilmember Nueva Camina's points and urgency to provide clarity. There's a fundamental problem here for me, and it has been over the past 7 years since I've been on council. And I don't always agree with the mayor's response. I don't always agree with the council member's response. And for me to sit silent on important issues feels like I'm letting myself down, letting down the people who I represent. And at the same time, I'm conflicted because I don't want to send us mixed signals or that mixed response, mixed messages. I think you have to put yourself in the mind of the people who are writing to us. They're desperate to get a response. The people I've talked to will say, who do I address this email to? And I say mayor council, because that's what I had always thought was their best way of getting attention. Maybe we shouldn't have a mayor council email. Maybe people in the community should make that decision. They address the mayor, and the mayor gives a response. They're not happy with it. Now they have another option. They can address the council and say, yes, I've talked to the mayor and I didn't like that response, or I didn't feel satisfied by that response, or vice versa. They go to the council, and the council, so I'm not really offering a solution, but I do think there is another perspective, and that is, yes, when we can be in agreement, we like to be in agreement. But when we're not in agreement, and that's happened a few times over the past 7 years, that doesn't mean that the public is served by us giving them a consensus response.
And not to answer for the council, but I think that's why there's that I'm responding with my own opinion too option, which is in there. Councilmember Anderson?
Great conversation, thank you. I will propose a interesting solution that nobody's brought up yet, is timeliness on response. But it would be great if the council email address had an auto reply set up that said, this is the ombudsperson for this month, and here's when you can expect a reply from. That is negotiated with the person that is responding based on their schedule. And then just for folks at home, a quick reminder that these rules are for council and not for the people who are trying to send us emails. So if you're following along, we are talking about ourselves. And I appreciate what Councilmember Nueva Camina has pointed out is like cut and dry. It's actually for us to benefit and make sure that we're clear on what we're communicating to each other in as best as we can in public. But what I'm hearing is that there are some people who would like to send emails externally to community members who email into council. So that's the basics. So if we get an email from the community, there are many council members who would love to hear from you. Secondly, to Mr. Fields' comment, there are efficiencies that we have to recognize for an individual who might be wanting to email multiple electeds at a time. So that's probably the benefit of the mayor and council email, the council email and the mayor council email. But there is maybe more confusion, especially for us, since that's what we're talking about rotating that person. One thing that could help with that is maybe quarterly or every block the 2 months together. Currently, we rotate once a month or so, and then we divide that work a little bit differently. So there's a kind of a division of labor question that I hear there. Anyway, just some thoughts on that. Thank you.
Before I call on the council president, we do have a auto respond for the mayor's box. that says thank you, and we will get back to you. So that is totally doable if that is of interest to the council. Council President.
I will note, Council Vice President Forsyth and I were talking about that the other day with our legislative coordinator, just to be able to send maybe one of the suggested responses, like we will get back to you. And some of them may say, they could just say, we've received your message and should have you, if you've asked a question, we'll get back to you. So that way, if someone hasn't asked a question, it's answered. So if the council's interested in that, we can kind of take a poll on that. I'm seeing some nodding heads there, but you know, we could implement that practice, which might help to just support some of the efficiencies there. And I appreciate Councilmember Novacomina's comments about the mayor council. I'm wondering, maybe we could just simplify that section if we felt comfortable to be able to say the mayor's office will answer this category of emails. If the ombuds has any questions or wants to answer any of these, they can reach out to the mayor's office. Because sometimes an ombuds may say, I feel strongly that this really needs a council response, right? So you could have that as like, basically, it's always going to be mayor unless the ombuds reaches out and proactively talks with them, or the mayor's office proactively reaches out to them to say, I would think this is actually in the council bucket, but essentially just saying they should communicate with each other, but otherwise it's assumed that the ombuds won't be responding. So we could do something like that. And I see a couple hands up, so I will stop.
Councilmember Salahuddin.
Thank you. I really like the idea of just a simple auto response, and in other, just as an example of other government agencies using an auto response, one opportunity for, I see Council Vice President's list of ideas and conversation could be, in addition to that acknowledgement, also using that space to share out things such as council conversations, other resources, things that are really timely in email response to residents who may or may not know about things that are going on with regard to council, the mayor's office, city work, and so forth.
Like there's draw this Thursday and a council conversation at the end of the month on the 30th, things like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Councilmember Stewart, I think you had your hand up. Did you have your hand up? Did I miss that?
I don't think I did, but I'll use this as an opportunity to say, Madam Mayor, if you chose to excuse your staff, because this is clearly council business doing council business, we would understand.
Oh, they know when they can drop off. They're enthralled, I'm sure, with this conversation. And to be honest, they end up responding to a lot of these emails, so it's actually helpful for them to hear kind of your thought process on it and what you're looking for in responses to. So, but yes, I see them there. Councilmember Nueva Camina.
Thank you, Mayor. I again, being newer and not knowing the history of why we have a mayor council box, and it seems that it's created a lot of confusion, and I'm not, for myself, I'm not clear as to why we have that. Different office, different operation between mayor's office and council. And I can understand wanting, both your office and council to be made aware of a concern, and I can see it that way. But wanting to have a better understanding of why it exists.
Sure. So I don't know when it first started, but for community members, often they are unsure of who will help them with their answer, and so mayor council's ease of use. You will email council and the mayor's office, and someone, mostly in my office, will figure out where it needs to go, and the answer will be had. Also, I'm full-time, you are part-time. There's an expediency to the answering as well. I don't know the history of why it started, but in my mind, it is push one button for a community member, and they know someone will answer their question. Often, I don't see your council emails, and often what they're at when they send an email just to council, it is really mayor's office that needs to respond to it. So it kind of ends that confusion too.
Could it then be a retraining? Because it sounds like it's been in place for quite some time, when Redmond was a very different Redmond with a different population, different engagement. Could it be, purely a curiosity question, could it be that we've outgrown that?
could be, but I still see daily emails that are appropriately addressed to mayor and the council too. So I would say it's still useful for many people. Councilmember Stewart?
Thanks. I think what we may be coming up against too is what direction we give community members. So actually email the council and mayor. The mayor council one is listed higher on our council webpage than email the council, just the council. So maybe when we get down to the weeds, there's some technicality there. I am just going to use this time to offer up another alternative, because I'm hearing some like mistrust and distrust and accountability and just concerns of those nature. So we do have a neighboring city who they have one council member who responds to all messages in the city of Issaquah. So they don't rotate ombud monthly, but essentially a council member is the ombud for the entire year. They are compensated a little bit extra, but it's just one of the ways that they've chosen to deal with it. And I wonder if there's interest in retaining the role of the ombud as from the council. In Issaquah's situation, they use their council president. From my perspective, it's a lot of work to put on the council president. However, that may deal with the is this message truly representing the council kind of questions that have been coming up. Thanks.
We're nearing 9:30, just so everyone knows where we are. Council Vice President.
Thank you. I've talked to the mayor of Issaquah, or the council president of Issaquah, about that as well, and how much work that is. And I think it's per our city code, the council positions cannot be paid differently. So that's one issue that we have that's different than theirs. And they also are a city that's half the size that we are. So that's another thing to consider there. I mean, we're growing in much different ways. We have a lot more community members to respond to. So there was an idea earlier of the legislative coordinator role working with council leadership, and we do that. I would prefer that over a straight just having it be one person all year. I do agree with Councilmember Stewart that I think having the opportunity to be ombuds for a month or two does make you a stronger council member. It makes you dig into that policy work that we've done and remember all that work that we've done. So I think this is a very valuable conversation, and we have a lot of solutions to sort through, and we can take this back and continue to have this conversation about how to improve this process. So I'm really grateful to everyone tonight for sharing their ideas. I really also love the idea of the audit for the process and how we're doing with this process. So I think that's something that we can take back and sort through all of these wonderful ideas and see how we can continue to improve this process.
Council President.
Thank you. In terms of also the comments around if we were to move to having state council leadership with the legislative coordinator work to answer things, which is kind of a similar setup to what Issaquah has, but with additional support. You might have two people plus an extra person to help them, right? So it's not just all on one person. I think with the concern that you wouldn't get to respond personally to constituents, which is I think what happens when you're ombuds, you do more responses. I wonder if each of us didn't have an ombuds month, but all year in a way was the opportunity for you to personally respond to constituents with your own opinion. I know that many council members, when we've gotten a lot of emails, have wanted to still respond to everyone with their own opinion in addition, and saying, you'll get the ombuds response, but here's where I'm at. If you took away the amount of time you might have spent doing the ombuds, finding the official response, it'd give you the opportunity actually to be able to spend more time writing your own personal opinion to constituents and creating relationships with them or inviting them to join you at office hours and being able to give some of that follow-up on top of kind of the official response that they get. Because I think what we're discussing here and what the ombuds is really intended to do is to provide constituents with what is the official opinion of the council and the official information from the city. And it has been used often by the ombuds as a way to connect with community members and sometimes share a little bit of their own editorial. And that's part of what we're trying to get at here, is how to separate those things so that we can all get that clear information to people while also developing our own relationships with constituents.
Councilmember Fields.
Okay, 2 ideas for our illustrious scribe over here, because I know that I risk a OPMA violation to send an email after this meeting. 2 thoughts. One, if we separated, we didn't have a mayor council, and if somebody writes to the mayor's office, they have an option, 2 options. They can respond from the mayor's perspective and include the ombuds for that as, here's my response. They could also refer it to council and let the person who wrote the email in to say, this is more of a council policy issue, and I've provided an initial response, but I've referred this for final discussion with our city council. The council could do the same thing. The council could say, thank you for this inquiry. I am referring this to the mayor's office because this is more in the executive administrative side. That would require, that takes away this efficiency that we talked about, but it actually might create some efficiencies in the long run because there's clarity for the people who are writing in. And there could also, from both mayor and council, an ongoing statement or a tag statement that says, here's my response. You can also write to the mayor's office, or you can also write to the council at whatever. That takes away some of that confusion. And I do feel that Councilmember Stewart, and I'm going back again to my years on council, I've always, I believe and firmly believe that it does make you a better council member when you respond. And my thought is this: we could, on the ombuds agenda item, really focus it on the ombuds inquiries for whoever that ombuds person is, and give all of, that's the point of it, right? To share that with council in case they missed it or they weren't focused on it. We could reserve some of the other ombuds discussions we've had over the past 4 or 5 months into committee agenda. When council members go to an event or council members went on an art walk or whatever, instead of making that part of the ombuds discussion, we could focus it specifically on the inquiries we got and move the other information, sharing community events, to another section of the agenda, and that way there would be additional clarity. I said that for the benefit of Councilmember Forsyth so she could capture my thoughts.
Are there any other comments for this evening? Council President.
I know it's getting late, but we still actually technically have about an hour left per our council rules. Just joking. I do want to bring up one item just to get clarity from everyone while we're in open session. Going back to the accountability mechanism, so that we can kind of draft some ideas on this, and also just to get a sense where people are at. If someone is doing the ombuds duty and they send a message that doesn't represent the views of the council, what are the mechanisms that we want to use to hold each other accountable? Should it be a discussion in open session? Should there be, a certain amount of time in which then, a council member couldn't do the ombuds role? Or should there be some other mechanism, like, for example, should council leadership be required to respond and correct. I mean, but it could be a council leader who does it, but maybe a member could be. I guess just in terms of some of those pieces, but that was a thought that I had was what are some of the mechanisms we have and what can we agree upon in terms of accountability? Should a council member feel that the ombuds is not responding in accordance with the council rules?
Councilmember Anderson?
Are these rules or a guidance?
I think the piece of the rules is responding on behalf of the council with a personal opinion and not the council's official opinion.
Has that occurred?
I think it has occurred in the past, and we haven't really had a good accountability mechanism to be able to address that.
In what way has it occurred in the past?
Council members have shared their personal opinion as the ombuds and not said that it's their personal opinion, made it sound like it's the opinion of the council.
Like recently within the last 2 years, or like how does this? Okay. So then would the proposal be to discuss that email in public?
No, apologies. I don't want to do the back and forth since we're in the meeting, but yeah, I would say, I guess the question is, I'm not exactly proposing, I'm just saying what would the council want to do as an accountability mechanism? It could be on council leadership, for example, to correct the record, or it could be that it would have to be brought up in open session. I guess the question is, are there different mechanisms we'd like to put in place?
Councilmember Fields?
Yeah, no, I think, I'm not quite sure how it works out, but I think that is important. I know that when I've been on ombuds duty, I've often said, as a representative of the council, thank you for your email, we appreciate it. On my personal opinion, and because I don't know what the council thinks, and I feel a sense of responsibility to respond. But I can't call all the council members and say, hey, I got this email, it's pretty lively. What do you guys think? We can't do that except for in open session. So I'm stuck. Do I just say, thank you for your email, sure nice of you to write to us, or do I actually give my opinion? So I don't know exactly how this works, but I do think open session discussion, and there's not going to be that many, folks. We don't get, when we do get controversial emails, they're usually 100 of the same email. So just a thought.
Any other comments on that? Councilmember Stewart?
I am thinking about the consequences of this rule being broken. And I guess it goes back to somebody said earlier, put yourself in the shoes of the community member. For me, in the recent instances when we've had this principle not followed, what it's done is it's created confusion and kind of then mistrust if there's conflicting information for the community member. I believe really strongly that it's our job as elected leaders at the local level to uphold trust in government. It's the level of government folks trust most in an era where trust and government don't often land in the same sentence. So in my mind, if we achieve what we're set out to do, and I appreciate Council Member Nueva Camina calling for a bit more clarity on a couple sections and maybe can offer some edits here. If we can achieve a standard on the paper we all agree to, and then we can't, a teammate fails to uphold it, then they then fail to be trusted by the rest of the team. And so I would offer that perhaps they are no longer having the privilege to serve as ombud. That's what's coming to me.
Any other thoughts on this at this moment? See none. So it sounds like you have shared a lot of ideas that our amazing Scribner has taken down in the vice president. I would offer that clearly not ready for approval of this document at this time. I would suggest, and I'm going to look to the council president, that the council leadership take a look at the offerings and figure out a way to kind of organize it and share it back to the council at a future meeting to go to the next steps. And I don't know, we'll have to look at the agenda. Ideally would be sometime at a study session, but those are going to be very precious moving forward. So I will talk with council leadership about what the next steps would be. I think there was one idea that could be at least by consensus approved this evening, and that was for an auto reply for the community members if an email comes in, and crafting of an auto reply to go back to them quickly so that they know someone's on it and then the email has been received. Is that correct, Council President? Is my memory serving me correctly?
Yes.
All right. And so I would ask the council if they're in general agreement that they would like us, the staff and us, to start working on that so that community members would have a quick auto reply response. Is there a yes? Should we? No. There's a no. There's a yes. Is there a how many thumbs up we got going on here? 1, 2, 3, a medium, and 4. So there is a majority that says yes, but perhaps what we'll do is work on what the response will be and bring it back.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, Council President.
We could bring a sample response back to the council as part of the follow-up on this. So I'll also just take the privilege of having the floor for a moment to just say thank you for everyone for your patience on working on this process. We are trying to figure something out that has long been a challenge for the council, and appreciate being able to take some of the extra time tonight to do it. And everybody sharing your thoughts on this. So hopefully we can make some improvements and get to something that we all agree on. I think the only question that will also be out there once we hopefully get to something we agree on is how we want to adopt this. The mayor did suggest at the beginning of the meeting, which I wasn't sure about, but we could potentially add this as an addendum to our rules, or we could just add a line to our rules that says, see Ombuds document, something like that. So that way, or we could just decide to agree upon it as a group norm, but it might be easier for accountability to have it officially in our rules. So I'll just put that out there as food for thought for our next discussion, and we'll bring this back.
So thank you all for the robust discussion. There are no other items of business this evening, and if there is no objection, we are adjourned.